Once again, I would like to welcome Jody and Shirin Ebadi for being very kind. First, to come to what we call the nerve center of the Tibetan movement. That's Dicki Chhoyang. And as you can see, our able and dedicated civil servants from the secretary level to junior levels are outside. And it's a great honor and privilege that both of you accepted our invitation and came all the way to be here. Firstly, we wanted you to come here and celebrate the 25th anniversary of His Holiness the Dalai Lama being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And also we specifically chose October 2nd, which happens to be Gandhi Jayanti, Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, because we believe of all the people who truly deserve the Nobel Peace Prize is Mahatma Gandhi. Hence, we chose the day. And then thirdly, we invited you all here because we want you to share your wisdom, your experience, and your knowledge to the Tibetan staff and especially to CTA, so that we can, our commitment to nonviolence and ahimsa remains firm and grows, and also because you two are a success story, of leading a nonviolent movement in many sense. For example, Shirin Ebadi was one of the first woman judge in Iran and went on to become Chief Justice. But then in 1979 revolution, she was deprived of the position. But then, strong, she initiated a few NGOs helping people on human rights matters, especially defending human rights activists who were treated illegally or against laws. So she has been such a strong advocate in Iran that the Iranian government felt threatened. Then when she was awarded Nobel Peace Prize, it became more prominent in Iran, and since then actually she has not been able to return home. Not just that, and she poignantly says that she has been exiled like us, so she feels for us, she understands what it means to be in exile, and to be separated from your own family members and make your family members say things that is not true is the last thing you want to hear. But despite all the challenges and obstacles in her life, she has remained true to her commitment to nonviolence, to human rights, and she is one of the foremost role models for us as far as nonviolence and human rights is concerned, and one of the exile leaders who continue to fight for justice, not just for people in Iran, but for people around the world like us Tibetans. So she has continuously shared her thoughts and her support for Tibetan people. And also, when I met both of them in Chicago, both of them willingly signed the press statement for the release of Liu Xiaobao, Nobel laureate who is in China. So I really want to thank Shirin Ebadi for being here. And we all know Jody she has been to Dharamshala before, and having spent 16 years in Massachusetts, she's from the next door state of Vermont. When she won the Nobel Peace Prize, the American media, especially Boston Globe, was all over her with many pictures of her house with the dirt road and her SUV, because she was at that time, the Nobel Peace Institute recognized her single-handedly with sole determination to fight against landmines. And she and her organization managed to ban the landmine, which is a major achievement. Actually, if you read any international news media, especially conflict areas, landmine is used as a weapon And ultimately, it's not your enemy who is defeated or who is challenged by the landmines. It's the civilians who suffer and continue to suffer for decades after the conflicts are over. So Jody Williams led a very courageous battle against all odds, and she prevailed, and that also is very, very inspiring for us, because given our situation, sometimes obviously as a human being, question arises, what about the Tibetan struggle? And so we have very dedicated and determined warrior, two women warrior, who succeeded in the battles in achieving their goals. So their success, in true sense, is our success. So hence, we want both of you to share your wisdom, your advice to Central Tibetan Administration and to the staff members and Tibetans in general, because your being here means a lot to us. And we also, being in the executive, we take pride in the fact that when last time the actor Richard Gay was here, he was quite surprised that there is Tibetan administration, there is this number of staff members. And I told him, this is the engine which runs the Tibetan cause, Tibetan movement. So these are the parts of, a very well-oiled engine parts that you can see, who on a daily basis work very hard to make our movement, known around the world and seek support from around the world. And then Jody Williams was sharing that she was here on the 50th anniversary of being in exile. And then this year now, obviously next year is going to be 55th anniversary. So both of them are, I think, a bit attracted to number 5. And then I was just sharing to them yesterday over dinner that His Holiness was born on, as per the lunar calendar, 5th day of the 5th month. So they were destined to be here. It's their karmic connection that they are here on this day. So we are extremely grateful to both of you, and especially the Nobel Women Initiative for doing all the hard work and to make it possible for them to be here, and their friends. And if you get time, you should always chat with them, and each one of them have very exciting and interesting stories to share. And we once again welcome two foremost Nobel laureates and their friends here in Dharamshala. So with that note, I would ask Shirin to share a few words of wisdom. Thank you.
صبح بخیر میگم به همه شما و بسیار خوشحالم که در حضور شما که برای تبت کار میکنید هستم.
Good morning to all of you. I'm very glad to be among you. You people are all working for Tibet.
من احتیاج به بلندگو ندارم، برای که زمانی که بچه بودم از یک لحظه غفلت مادرم استفاده کردم، یه بلندگو قورت دادم، بنابراین من اصلا چیزی نمیخوام.
I actually don't need a microphone. The reason for it is that when I was little, when my mother was not looking, I swallowed the microphone. So
برای افرادی که در تبعید هستند و برای آزادی و آزادی کشورشون، ملتشون و فرهنگشون کار میکنن مثل من و شما، یک مسئله خیلی مهمه.
There's one thing that's very important for people who work for their culture and who work for their nation, like you and me.
اون مسئله این است که شما هرچی بیشتر بایستی به مردم کشورتون که در تبت هستند دسترسی پیدا کنید و افکارتون رو با اونها بیان کنید.
And that issue is to be able to convey your thoughts to your compatriots who live in Tibet.
به همین دلیل مسئله داشتن رسانه برای شما خیلی مهمه.
Therefore, one thing that's very important is to have media.
بایستی رادیو و تلویزیون داشته باشید.
Radio and television.
که افکارتون رو به مردم تبت برسانید.
so that you can convey your thoughts to the people of Tibet.
و هر چه بیشتر این ایستگاه ها رو تقویت بکنید.
And add to the numbers of the broadcasting stations.
من تا امروز نفهمیدم که آیا شما تلویزیون دارید یا نه.
I still don't know whether you do have a television broadcast program or no.
Online television.
Online.
تلویزیون آنلاین کافی نیست.
And online television is not enough.
برای اینکه بهتر میدونید که در دهات دور افتاده تبت همه اینترنت ندارن.
Because you know better than I do that many people who at least live in villages in Tibet may not have access to the internet.
بنابراین من فکر میکنم مهمترین کاری که اولویت شما باید این باشد که تلویزیون ایستگاه تلویزیونی درست کنید.
Therefore, I think that your priority is to come up with a television station.
و همچنین رادیو 24 ساعته داشته باشید.
Also 24-hour radios.
کار دیگری که میتونید بکنید این است که تلویزیون های دیگر آزاد دیگر رو به زبان تبتی ترجمه کنید و بفرستید.
One other thing that you can do is to translate the programs of other free televisions and send it to the people in Tibet.
این اتفاقی است که در ایران افتاده.
This is what has happened in Iran.
ما بیش از 50 کانال تلویزیونی داریم.
We have over 50 television channels.
و علاوه بر اونها یورو نیوز به زبان فارسی هم ترجمه میشه.
Also, Euronews is being translated into Persian or Farsi.
و من فکر میکنم اگر که شما این مسئله رو با یورو نیوز مطرح بکنید اونها حاضر خواهند شد که ترجمه تبتی هم بذارن.
And I think that if you talk to Euronews, they may welcome Tibetan translation of their programs.
و از این طریق شما میتوانید اخبار واقعی رو به مردم تبت برسونید و نه اون چیزی که فقط دولت چین میخواد.
And this way you can bring the real news to the people of Tibet, not what the Chinese government wants.
و مسئله مهم دیگر این است که خبرنگارهای خیلی خوب داشته باشید.
And the other important thing is to have very good journalists.
و من فکر میکنم خیلی خوبه که کمیته مرکزی همون اسمی که دارن تعدادی از شما رو بورس بده که دوره‌های پیشرفته ژورنالیسم در هند و در کشورهای غربی ببینید.
And I think it's a very good idea for the Central Administration to provide you with scholarships so that you can go and do further education in journalism, whether it is in India or in other countries in the West.
زمانی که من درس می‌خواندم استادی داشتم که به من حرف خیلی خوبی زد.
When I was at the university, I had a professor who gave me a great advice.
گفت یک شیشه عطر تا زمانی که درش بسته است کسی نمیدونه که این توش چیه، آیا بوی خیلی خوبی داره، عطر گرون قیمتیه یا نه.
He said that a bottle of perfume, until it is closed and not opened, does not smell good because we haven't smelled it yet. It doesn't smell like perfume.
نوشتن و اطلاع رسانی مانند این است که شما در شیشه عطر رو باز کنید.
But writing and conveying your thoughts, it's like opening the bottle of perfume.
من 5 سال قبل هم آمدم اینجا و متوجه شدم که هولینوس چه کارهای مهمی اینجا انجام میده.
5 years ago when I was here, I found out what important things His Holiness has done here.
و من همیشه برای مبارزات هولینوس احترام قائل بودم، ولی کم 5 سال قبل که آمدم و این مدارس شما رو دیدم احترامم 10 برابر شد.
I always respected His Holiness, but when I came here 5 years ago and saw your schools, my respect for him increased tenfold.
شما بایستی کارهای خوبی که انجام میدید به گوش همه برسونید.
You have to bring the word of all of the good that you do to the whole world.
و برای این کار احتیاج به خبرنگاران خیلی خوب دارید.
And this is why you need very good journalists.
فیلم برداران، کارگردانای مستندساز.
Also documentary directors,
عکاسای خیلی خوب.
good photographers.
بنابراین بورسایی که میدید به جوانان تبتی سعی کنید بیشتر در این زمینه ها باشید.
Therefore, when you provide the young Tibetans with scholarships, try to get them into these fields.
و بدین ترتیب شما طرفداران خودتون مردم رو آگاه میکنید و با آگاه شدن مردم طرفدارانتون چه در زمینه چه بین تبتی ها و چه بین بین المللی ها بیشتر میشه.
This way you will bring awareness to the people in the world, and then you will have more supporters, either within the Tibetan society or in general, the people of the world.
معمولا میگن که وکلا زیاد حرف میزنن.
It is usually said that attorneys talk a lot.
اما من میدونم که این یک شایعه دروغه و من برای اینکه ثابت بکنم دیگه حرف نمیزنم که اگر سوالی از من داشتید فرصت بکنید.
But I know that this is a myth. That's why in order to prove it, I'm going to stop talking. So
I find it very humbling to be asked to share wisdom. I think that each and every one of us has our own wisdom that comes from our own experience. I would be thrilled to hear your wisdom. I would be thrilled to hear how you prevail after 50 years in exile. I would be thrilled to hear about your resilience and how you have managed to keep your culture alive and how you have managed to continue along the non-violent middle path that is such an example in the world. The Nobel Women's Initiative came together in 2006. And it is 6 of us who received the Nobel Peace Prize, and our purpose in coming together was to use the Nobel Prize and share it with women's organizations around the world who were working for sustainable peace with justice and equality, of course through nonviolent means. We frequently take delegations, as we are here, as we have been here before, to areas of the world that are under stress and strain and conflict, where there are people, even in the midst of armed conflict, struggling to find a peaceful solution. A few years back, for example, we took a delegation of women to meet with women in Palestine and women's groups in Israel that despite how many years, 70 years now of occupation and oppression of the people of Palestine, still those women worked together to find a way to bring nonviolent solution to that horrible, seemingly never-ending conflict and occupation. And when I think about sort of the comparison of the occupation of Tibet and the Tibetans in exile, and I think about occupied Palestine and some Palestinians who live in exile, the comparison to me is a little bit interesting because you have chosen nonviolence. And I think that the choice of nonviolence, even though some observe nonviolence to be a weak response, is actually the most strong response one can have. I think about the recent conflict in Gaza, for example. What was the result of the violence? What was the result of the violence of Hamas firing rockets against Israeli civilians? It brought down the wrath of the hyper-militarized Israelis on that teeny little community in collective punishment. The people suffered collective punishment because of the violence of a few. And now the people of Gaza are facing 20 or 30 years of destruction and attempts to rebuild that tiny strip of land. What was gained with violence? I would say nothing. Whereas the West Bank, for whatever reason, is somewhat more peaceful, and their struggle has resulted in recognition by the United Nations. The Palestinians now are recognized observers in the UN. So it makes one really think about what you gain with violence and what you gain with nonviolence, which to me is the most courageous path. I'm a professor, sort of, because I'm mostly a grassroots activist. But I do teach students in a graduate school of social work at the University of Houston. And my purpose there is to try to help them understand the problems of the world, because Houston is an area of huge refugee influx. And if they don't understand the traumas that bring people to Houston, how can they possibly help them overcome the trauma? How can they possibly help them integrate into a completely different society? We've had many fascinating discussions. Many of my students are African American. Many of them are at the university for the first time of their families. And when we talk about racism, occupation, oppression, we always get into a very big discussion about Martin Luther King, who of course is the famous leader against racism in the United States, and he is also a Nobel Peace Laureate. And I talked to them about, yes, he was a leader, no question. I am introduced as a leader on the landmine campaign. But one person alone does not change the world. Martin Luther King alone did not change racism in America. What began to change racism in America, because my country is still extremely racist, was the thousands and millions of people in my country who joined with him to force that change in a nonviolent fashion. What allowed us success in the landmine movement was thousands and millions of people in 90 countries around the world who worked together on a common cause. And when I talk with my African American students about Martin Luther King and the nonviolent path, many of them get angry. Many of them who are young and still have that angry passion want to talk about the Black Panthers. I don't know if you know them. The Black Panthers were a violent, armed group in the US during that time that thought with violence they could end racism in my country. Malcolm X, who in his early years was violent and then recognized that violence was not the way. And when we discuss it, they come to recognize that the only answer is nonviolence, because as I asked them, who prevailed? It wasn't the Black Panthers. They were killed, they were imprisoned. It wasn't Malcolm X, he was assassinated, as was Martin Luther King. But it was the nonviolent thousands and millions in my country that helped forge a path toward the beginning of the possibility of the end of racism in the United States. So time and time again, when I consider nonviolence versus armed revolution, I cannot come to any other conclusion. But nonviolence is the only way to preserve a people, to preserve their culture, and move it forward to a day when oppression does end. And sometimes it seems like it's never, ever going to end. I would imagine there are days when every Tibetan in Tibet and every Tibetan in exile just cries. Cries about karma and cries about fate and cries that the Chinese are so oppressive. And weeping is good, I think. Weeping takes the toxins out of our body and lets us grieve, and loss does result in grief. And it is good to recognize and accept grief and move through it. And in doing that, then one finds the strength again to take up the nonviolent struggle that someday, and we never know when it will be, it could be tomorrow, it could be in a week, it could be in a month. Take up the nonviolent struggle that honestly you show the world the path of nonviolence today. I can think of few other peoples in the world that offer the example of the people of Tibet. That is why so many are drawn to His Holiness as the symbol of the people of Tibet. That is why so many people come here to hear your wisdom, to watch how you manage in exile, to see the amazing way you have dealt with grace and dignity in exile, in keeping your culture, keeping your language, building schools for your children, hospitals. There are few that are as powerful as the example of the people of Tibet. And I agree with Shirin in that your story needs to be told more. More people in the world need to understand that example and that choice, especially in comparison with what happens when violence erupts and what happens to the people. The men who raise arms are looking for power. They are not really looking for the benefit of the people. You Tibetans come together for everybody in Tibet, and that wisdom of action is so inspiring. That is why when I am asked to share wisdom, it makes me nervous. Compared to all of you, my wisdom is weak and little. But I think that it is, all of us are a testament to the fact that each of us do have power. Each of us can choose how we want to be in the world. Each of us can choose the nonviolent path. Each of us can choose to work as a collective community, and everybody brings their own talents and energy and skill to the community to make change happen, even if it isn't in our lifetime. I think sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that, I want change today. And that just doesn't usually happen. The hardest thing to accept is that my contribution to change may help change, and I may die before I see the change I hope for. But I will die knowing that I contributed to the change that I know someday will happen. I will end just with a little note about Gandhi. When I received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997, we were having a little informal dinner that you have with the Nobel Committee. And they were actually talking about some of the bad choices they made, some of the wrong decisions. I was quick to point out Henry Kissinger, the war criminal of the United States of America, was an extremely bad decision. They agreed. However, it was too late. But then they offered that one of the worst omissions that they ever made was in not giving the Nobel Peace Prize to Gandhi. And their argument was that they feared if he were given the Nobel Prize, it would result in violence in India. That is not the right reason to give or not give a Nobel Peace Prize. As you rightly said, he was a shining example to all of us, as is His Holiness, and the people of Tibet, in the valor and courage of the nonviolent pathway. So, in the hearts of all of us, Gandhi has a Peace Prize. He doesn't need the Nobel Peace Prize. He has the affection and love of the world. I think that's much more important. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insightful perspective on issues, and particularly wisdom and advice from both of you. Yes, I forgot to say, when I say online television, I was just simply talking about Central Tibetan Administration. Otherwise, yes, Voice of America and Radio Free Asia, there we have television, radio stations, all that. And then when you mentioned importance of journalism and photojournalism, I could see some of budding journalists smiling here, and hopefully from tomorrow on they will take the responsibilities more seriously as well as they do now. And then when I met Shirin yesterday, I asked to advise, and she said, no, actually I've come here because I myself in exile. I've come here to learn Tibetans in exile for 50 years, how you did it. She sees Tibetans as a success story of being in exile. Nonetheless, you know, you have not just being in exile, but in fact, while you were in Iran, you took on the government, you know, up front, and you also suffered the consequences. Despite all the challenges that was unfolding before you, you decided to launch NGOs to defend human rights. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of determination. And that courage and determination means a lot to Tibetans inside and outside Tibet. So that means, you know, I mean, that shows you are truly, truly inspiring person and a role model for not just Tibetans, but many Chinese in China as well. And Jody Williams, as she shared, she has also come to thank Tibet and Tibetan people, particularly His Holiness Dalai Lama. Both of them were very good friends of His Holiness. And in fact, when the issue of His Holiness Dalai Lama going or not going to South Africa for the Nobel Peace Summit became public, two of them, their friends, four Nobel laureates, issued a press release boycotting the Nobel Peace Summit in South Africa because His Holiness could not go. Now the whole Peace Summit in South Africa is cancelled because majority, in fact absolute majority of Nobel Peace Laureates refused to attend the event if His Holiness could not go. So that shows that you are not just Nobel laureates, but then your core principle still not just live but still thrive, and you practice on a daily basis. So there's principle and there's practice. So you two are not just shining example, but persons who are deeply committed to the cause, to the principle, and practice it on a daily basis. So your gesture of issuing a press release not to attend the Nobel Peace Summit in South Africa and joined by other Nobel laureates is very encouraging for Tibetans, because we also, when we are fighting for justice, sometimes, yes, Tibetans do cry, sometimes questions do come to your mind. What happens to nonviolence? What happens to justice in this world? But then your voices, your stand, and your coming all the way to Dharamshala sends a powerful message to Beijing that we have friends around the world who will stand with us for justice. And there are people all over the world, through you and your office and through Noble Women's Initiative, that justice ought to prevail eventually. And in the case of Tibet, we feel sooner than later, because our commitment to nonviolence and our commitment to peace, we believe, is also a role model for many marginalized groups and many refugees around the world, including the conflict regions around the world. We think we are the better alternative for conflicts around the world. So if we succeed, if Tibetan struggles succeed, we know His Holiness' belief and advocacy of non-violence will succeed. We believe Gandhiji's principle of ahimsa will succeed. We believe that the Nobel Laureates, your support and your solidarity will succeed. So when that happens, when that day comes, we also know that will be one of the best stories of the 21st century. And we know it will come soon. And hence, today you have come to Dharamshala, which means the place of Dharam, or religion, or philosophy. Next time we would like to see in Lhasa. Lhasa means land of gods. So from Dharamshala, we'll go to Lhasa. So till then, be with us and keep supporting us and keep raising your voice for us. And together we'll march on, together we'll succeed. Now with that note, I already apologize both the Nobel Laureates, because I was asked to inaugurate another event at Minzakan. Now we went through quite a bit of scheduling, so I'm supposed to be there at 11:30, hence it will take a little longer, that's what it says. Having said that, I've asked Chado Kalon Dicki Chhoyang to carry forward with Q&A. Whenever I have actually chaired the panel, the questions have been rare. But whenever other guests have come, in my absence, I was told many more questions have come. So if you're looking for exciting questions, then my presence, I think, is net minus. So my absence will help, open up. And then all of you also, our guests are also, you can ask any questions to them and then to us as well. So with that note, I'll leave the floor and leave two of my, this is our third meeting in the Tibetan tradition. Number 3 is very lucky. So lucky friends here in good hands, and please do enjoy the session and interact with them and seek their wisdom as much as you can, because they are here purposely to share their thoughts and get insight from you as well. So with that note, once again, thank you very much, and we will be seeing each other a couple of times today and tomorrow. So thank you very much. Salam.
Our thank you to both of you for sharing your personal stories and your opinion and thoughts about the Tibetan struggle. We can read about you, but it does not compare to having you here in person to have a direct exchange with our staff here. I know this is not your first visit to Dharamshala, but it is your first visit with the 14th Kashak, the new administration that was that assumed office in 2011. You are coming at a very important historical turning point in the Tibetan community. As you know, His Holiness devolved his political authority to the elected leadership in 2011. We are the first administration to assume that full authority from the beginning of our mandate. Most of the members of the Central Tibetan Administration that you see here represent first, second, third generation born in exile. The generation that came out of Tibet over 50 years ago is now in their 80s, 90s. We are born in exile, but we have a tremendous moral responsibility to ensure the sustainability of the governing body that is the Central Tibetan Administration, to ensure that our struggle moves on. How we sustain our struggle beyond His Holiness's presence amongst us is a huge question, as we've discussed earlier. And this generation that you are seeing here is the generation that will have to see us through this very, very difficult transition period. Mrs. Ebadi asked us, how did we manage to sustain over 50 years in exile? And I will be honest with you, it is not easy, especially when we are faced with a new generation that has never set foot in Tibet, born in exile, and cannot go back. How do we maintain the legacy, the vision of His Holiness, and continue to carry on our work beyond the day-to-day bureaucratic chores with a sense of urgency and a mission, and with the tremendous responsibility to know that we are the voice of the Tibetan people in the free world? We are called each day for courage, wisdom, and perseverance. I read in one of the writings from Mrs. Ebadi that change must come from within, and that is something that very much applies to Tibet. The Central Tibetan Administration does not lead the freedom struggle. We lead the response to the aspirations of Tibetans inside Tibet. So whatever their aspiration is, our responsibility is to respond to those aspirations. Human nature is such that no matter how much one believes in the just cause that one pursues, we still need gestures of support and solidarity to sustain our spirit. And so, by you coming here today to be with us, we take great comfort in knowing that people like you are willing to take action and not just speak words. And who would have known months ago when we started planning this visit that it would coincide with the latest event in South Africa? So I think the Nobel Women's Initiative has taught a lesson to the world in how you handled this situation. So thank you again for doing that. Tomorrow, we're delighted to have you join us to observe Gandhi Jayanti. As you know, in 2007, the UN General Assembly declared October 2nd as the Day of Nonviolence. And as made very clear by all my fellow countrymen and women, we are firmly committed to nonviolence, despite our age and our location in or outside Tibet. Having you amongst us symbolizes for us your support for our struggle, but more important, I hope that you remember this visit as a heartfelt expression of admiration, respect, and support from the Tibetan people for your efforts, ongoing efforts, to make this world more just, peaceful, and equal. Thank you.